A Kingdom Divided, The Outbreak of the Wars of the Roses. Welcome to One Time History. Today, we invite you to step back in time and explore one of the darkest and most utterly fascinating chapters in European history. Imagine a realm bleeding from internal wounds, a country where brother fights brother, and where the simple color of a blooming flower decides between life and death. For decades, the island of England was trapped in a brutal civil war that would forever be remembered in the chronicles of time as the Wars of the Roses. On one side stood the mighty House of York, symbolized by the white rose. On the opposing side stood the deeply entrenched House of Lancaster, bearers of the red rose. This was not a simple war of kings. It was an uncompromising struggle for absolute power that dragged an entire nation into chaos. The devastation tore apart the very fabric of medieval society. Loyalty became a fragile currency, and no one was safe from the executioner's block. Every family was forced to choose a side, knowing full well that the wrong choice meant absolute ruin. For over 30 agonizing years, devastating battles swept relentlessly across the countryside. Magnificent stone fortresses were battered and ground to dust by terrifying new artillery and cannon fire. Tens of thousands of men lost their lives in the mud, the economy was in ruins, and trade ground to a halt. The crown changed hands so violently and so often that a man hailed as the rightful king in the morning could easily be a lifeless casualty in the dirt by evening. The fertile fields lay fallow, and death became a constant companion on the roads. The common folk bore the heaviest burden of this aristocratic blood feud. Villages were pillaged, livestock slaughtered, and entire communities wiped from the map in the name of rival claimants to the throne. But even the darkest night must eventually surrender to the breaking dawn. A new leader stepped onto the stage, determined to forge lasting peace from the smoldering ashes of his homeland. He understood perfectly that to rule a broken kingdom, he had to be both a ruthless warrior and a cunning diplomat. Decision on the battlefield. It is the late summer of 1485. The air is thick with humidity and anticipation. Two massive armies face each other on a sprawling field. The tension is a physical, crushing weight. Knights clad in gleaming plate armor sit atop their war horses, while foot soldiers with pole axes and longbows stand in tight, nervous formations. The banners of the red and white roses snap fiercely in the wind. With the piercing blast of trumpets and the rhythmic beating of war drums, the final decisive clash begins. Arrows darken the sky, and the deafening clash of steel merges with the agonizing screams of the wounded into a horrific symphony of destruction. In the heart of the chaos, the reigning king fights desperately like a cornered beast, but history has already written its final verdict. Betrayal strikes from within his own ranks, turning the tide of battle irrevocably. The king falls, and his jeweled crown tumbles into the bloody mud. Following the final devastating cavalry charges, the roar of weapons finally falls silent. The dented iron armor is cast aside. On the winding country roads, surviving troops are no longer marching into battle. They are finally returning home, a profoundly surreal sight for an entire generation that knew nothing but war. The shattered fortress walls are repaired, stone by heavy stone. The monumental task of rebuilding begins. With this hard-won peace, vibrant life slowly returns to the cities. Alleys fill once again with the lively noise of merchants and craftsmen, and exotic spices and rich fabrics are enthusiastically traded on the marketplaces. The people dare to hope again. Out in the countryside, heavy wooden plows turn the rich soil for a new harvest, while on the coasts, shipyards emerge, signaling the dawn of a completely new era of seafaring and global trade. The foundation of a new era. Yet the most brilliant strategic masterstroke of this era does not take place on a blood-soaked battlefield, but in the sacred silence of a grand cathedral. To cast the fragile piece in stone, an unprecedented decision is made. The victor of the wars knows that military might alone cannot secure a lasting dynasty. He must heal the deepest wound of the realm. The two bitterly feuding houses are united through the sacred bond of marriage. The triumphant heir of Lancaster takes the beautiful heiress of York as his queen. It is a masterstroke of political genius. The red rose and the white rose merge beautifully into a single emblem. It is the glorious birth of an entirely new royal dynasty. England breathes a collective sigh of relief. Church bells ring out joyously across the land. Magnificent feasts are held, and wine flows freely in the streets. For a brief moment, the horrors of the past are forgotten in the warm glow of celebration. However, the peace is deceptively fragile. Whoever holds supreme power inevitably attracts deep-seated envy and dangerous ambition. Even as the country tries to heal, old hatreds boil violently just beneath the surface. They merely sleep, waiting for a single spark to ignite the flames of rebellion once more. Shadows gather in the dark corners of the royal court, and in dimly lit taverns across the sea, exiled lords whisper treasonous plans. Knowing they cannot defeat the powerful new king in open combat, they resort to base deception. They present the public with a pretender, a carefully trained impostor claiming boldly to be the true, lost heir to the throne of the White Rose. The rebellion spreads like wildfire, fueled by foreign gold and bolstered by hardened mercenary forces in the misty northern moors. The terrifying specter of civil war rises from its shallow grave, the final act and legacy. When news of this shocking treason reaches the court, the crown's fury is boundless. The king will not allow a phantom from the bloody past to tear down his life's work. One last time, the royal armies mobilize with terrifying efficiency. The forces clash on a rain-soaked field with unrestrained ferocity. One last time, black arrows darken the sky. But this rebellion is fundamentally doomed. The rebel lines break under the relentless pressure, and the impostor's forces scatter in sheer panic. The royal troops crush the insurgents without an ounce of mercy. The plotters are put in heavy iron chains and dragged roughly before the throne. The verdict is swift and final. There will be no leniency for treason. Executions follow swiftly, serving as a grim, bloody reminder of the ultimate price of rebellion. With the final revolt definitively crushed, the king's power stands undisputed. The throne is secure, and the dynasty is cemented in both blood and law. An unprecedented phase of economic stability and cultural flourishing begins. Royal mints run day and night, while the future succession of the dynasty is secured with the joyful birth of healthy royal heirs. The dark days of war finally fade into history, becoming exaggerated tales told by old men by the hearth fire. On the restless seas, proud English ships unfurl their sails to establish lucrative new trade routes that will bring unimaginable wealth to the island nation. The realm transforms entirely, shifting from a fractured medieval battlefield into a centralized, majestic Renaissance state. The arts and sciences flourish under generous royal patronage, and magnificent new palaces with massive glass windows replace the grim fortresses of old. United forever, the red and white flowers survive the centuries as the Tudor rose, carved deeply into grand cathedral doors and woven into magnificent tapestries as an immortal symbol of unity and strength. It serves as a timeless reminder that even after the cruelest storms, a majestic new era can bloom into existence.
Thank you for watching One Time History. Subscribe, leave a comment, and stay endlessly curious for our next fascinating journey into the past.